Hi, everyone, and welcome to my webinar on self-care for online faculty. So my name is Kristen Bergalt, and I teach in the School of Education at Quinnipiac University. I teach in the Masters of Instructional Design program, which is a fully online program, and I've been teaching online in this program for the past 10 years. You won't find me doing a webinar on self-care for grounded faculty because I actually have no experience teaching grounded courses or in-person courses at the university level. I have plenty of experience doing workshops and trainings in that environment, but I've never formally taught in person in a classroom. So all of the strategies that I'm going to share tonight really can apply to anybody's self-care, but we want to specifically look at the things that I have, the tools I've developed to combat some of the challenges specific to online faculty and people who are teaching in online environments. So whether you are new to online teaching or a veteran, I'm going to share some of the things that I've learned over the years, and I'm hoping that you will all chime in with some things that have worked for you as well. So first, a little word of caution. Over the past several years, I have seen an increase in the demands that are put on faculty and on staff at the university, at all universities. This is not a unique problem to Quinnipiac. People are asked to do more and more service, more and more research, more and more teaching with larger class sizes. And I think this is really true across a lot of industries. Obviously, specifically, I know higher ed best. Um, and along with that has come this push for self-care. And obviously, no one's going to argue with self-care being a good thing, right? We all need to take care of ourselves and we all have a responsibility to take care of ourselves. Um, However, sometimes I feel as though institutions are pushing self-care rather than looking at themselves and at creating more sustainable structures for people to work in those environments. And so I don't really want to talk about self-care without addressing the fact that there are a lot of things that would make online teaching more manageable for faculty. And so, along with adopting these strategies to take care of ourselves, I hope that we also continue to advocate for some really important things. One is smaller class sizes. The most effective way to teach is to build relationships with students. And even though the online classroom feels like it's, an endless space that you can just add as many students as you want to. There really is a number where you hit an upper limit of what a faculty member can manage in that space in order to generate effective learning. There is research behind this. I'm happy to dig it up for people. And in my experience and based on the research, that number is somewhere between 16 and 18 students in a class. I know for some of you probably gasping because I know you teach huge courses with a lot more students in that. And I think it's natural at the institutional level to try to push to have more bodies in the class because, of course, that is a more effective business model. But if we really want to push on effective online education, we need to advocate for smaller class sizes at every opportunity that we have. The second is better technology. When we have technology that limits us to the ways that we can communicate with students, such as text-based communication, um, there are certain things that happen to our bodies when we're forced to sit at a desk, when we're forced to be typing all of our communication with our students. And so having access to better technology, such as video chats or audio tools, can just give a variety to the things that we ask our bodies to do in our teaching. Another is better online learning infrastructure at a university. So having supports in place, supports for students, mental health support, technology support, all of those things in the absence of that infrastructure, those responsibilities fall on the backs of faculty. And as we're going to talk about, can lead to some boundary problems with faculty not being able to kind of carve out the time to get to all of these issues that students are experiencing. When we have a team of others who are helping support the online students, less is going to fall on the faculty. And finally, better training and preparation. As we all know, if we're not well trained to do a job, if we don't know how to do it efficiently and effectively, it's just going to take us more time. And so having better training and preparation and onboarding for online faculty, as well as ongoing professional development, will give us the tools to be better at our jobs, and then therefore it will be overall less taxing. I also want to talk about proactive self-care versus reactive self-care. So often when we hear someone talk about self-care, they'll say, "Oh, just take the day off, or go to the spa, or put on a face mask." And those things, we're going to talk about kind of more meaningful approaches to self-care, but those are also reactive. Those are things that you do because you have reached the point of burnout where you need to do something, otherwise you can no longer function. You are exhausted, you are burnt out, and you're basically applying a band-aid rather than fixing the root problem. Um, so the strategies that I'm going to talk about today are not those quick fix things. The strategies that I am going to talk about are proactive. These are things that you can build, can and should build into your daily life or weekly life or monthly, just regular practices that you can engage with that will keep you in, a positive mindset, good mental health, good physical health. And those things, by doing a little bit each day, the intent is that it will add up cumulatively and just help us better able to manage the things that come at us rather than just applying the band-aid when it's kind of too late. And finally, my last disclaimer, self-care is highly individual. So I'm going to share strategies that worked for me. I hope we can have some discussion about strategies that have worked for you, but don't feel like just because it works for me that it's something you have to try. If it doesn't resonate, let it go. It's not, this isn't like a one size fits all approach, and you're going to probably have to work a little bit to find the things that work well for you. And it's probably going to take some experimentation and time. So I'm going to talk about four primary areas of focus, and these are really based on some of the challenges of teaching online. And so those areas are movement, boundaries, creativity, and community. And I've developed a little workbook to go along with this. You can use the first page of that workbook to record some strategies that we talk about today in each of these categories that you might want to try out. The first is movement. So we know online teaching is a sedentary activity. I spend 99.9% of my work time sitting at this particular desk in my home office. We know that sitting is not good for our bodies. We know that, the back and the neck are being stressed by being in this position. Typing is rough on the hands and the arms. So this is one of the things that I think is very different from on-ground faculty who, first of all, like, usually commute out of their homes. They have to go to campus, park their car, walk to where they're going, and then be present in the classroom, often standing at the front of a classroom, maybe for 3 hours. And that lifestyle is very different from online faculty. Almost everything I do has to be sitting at a desk at a computer. I have tried a standing desk. It's not for me. I also don't think that it's probably great to be standing in that exact position for long periods of time, for many days at a time. I participated in an experiment at Quinnipiac actually, where I was on a treadmill working. I found that to be really enjoyable and I did feel pretty good overall, but it wasn't sustainable for me because I don't have a treadmill at home. So I have a couple ideas of things that I do in order to combat that sedentary lifestyle. So, number one is to prioritize workouts. And I know everybody has workouts that work for them. Maybe people don't have workouts, but for me, the most important thing has been figuring out how I can regularly move my body. And for me, that has been swimming. So I swim 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. This goes into my calendar. Weeks in advance. I schedule my time at the Y and it's blocked out in my Outlook calendar. So you will never be able to set an appointment with me between 7:30 and 8:30 in the morning. That is the first thing that goes into my calendar. And so I prioritize that time. The second is regular breaks. So there was recently some research done by NPR's Manoush Zomorodi, who talks about the project is called the Body Electric. I've included a challenge, week-long challenge in the workbook based on this study and the research that she's been doing. To that, if you're sitting at a desk, in order to maintain health, you need to get up 5 minutes every half an hour. I've tried this. It seems impossible. I get very into the flow of my work, and so interrupting that flow to get up every half an hour would be really disruptive. So I try to aim for 5 or 10 minutes every hour, kind of on the hour to get up. In between meetings, get up, take a walk around my house, poke around, get outside if it's nice out. I think that this is really important to force ourselves to take these breaks. Even if you just are doing a walk at lunch, a 15, 20-minute walk on your lunch break or in the beginning or end of your day, or all of those times, cumulatively it will add up. And finally, desk stretches. So it's important to remember Again, when we're sitting in that typing position at our desks all day, we have to take the time to stretch our wrists out, stretch our shoulders, roll our necks. And I even encourage people to get up during a Zoom session, if you have a long Zoom session with students or a meeting, and just do some stretching, do some over the head stretching, do some flexing of your shoulders and your back, rotate things, walk in place. This could even count as your 5-minute break if you get up and walk in place for 5 minutes. Um, you can also incorporate movement while if you're watching student videos or presentations. Just try to remind yourself to get up and move your body. The next is probably the most important, and this is boundaries. So online teaching has no beginning, no clear beginning and no end. Once that semester kicks off, I could go for 14 weeks straight without sleeping or eating and put energy into teaching my courses. I can be researching new things to include. I could be um, building up my modules, adding in new technology tools. I could be interacting with my students, answering email, taking advising calls. I can, most of my time goes into grading papers and providing feedback, grading presentations, creating, digital video content. So online teaching will expand to fill all of your available time. And so if you do not put boundaries in place for yourself, and I also encourage you to have your students put boundaries in place, that there just will be no beginning and end. So what do I mean by boundaries? So first of all, establish your work hours. Anyone who is teaching face to face is probably going in for, a 6 to 8 hour chunk of time around when their class is being taught. They have a set time when their class is being taught. And so for online faculty, we have to create that for ourselves. So for myself, I bring my kids to school, I swim, I come home, and I start working. I take a break at 2 p.m. to pick up my kids from school, and then I work till 5 p.m. Those are my hours. And I make that known in my Outlook calendar. I make that known to students. Um, and so it's really important to establish that. I also take Saturdays off from answering email or going on the computer. Yes, sometimes, when the workload gets really intense, I will have to work on a Saturday, but I try very hard to preserve that time for my family. And I communicate that to my students so that they know if you need help on an assignment, get that request into me by Friday afternoon. Do not try to email me on a Saturday morning and expect that I will respond to you anytime before Sunday. I do check in. Most of my students' assignments are due on Sundays, so I do check in on Sundays and try to answer any questions that come up. But I make it very clear from the beginning with them through my syllabus, through my announcements, that I won't be available on Saturdays. Next is to honor our breaks. So again, we have coming up, we have spring break, and it might seem like a really great time to catch up on a lot of work, and it is, and you certainly can use some time to do that. But I also encourage you to take time off during that break to do things that restore you. And again, this goes back to being proactive rather than reactive. Maybe right now you don't feel burnt out. We've only been teaching for 7 weeks, so we feel, pretty good. We're still fresh. But if we don't take the break that's been given to us, that second half of the semester can very quickly become overwhelming. So we have this built-in break. Take a day or two off from your computer. Take a day or two off from being in the constant, you know, on-call email situation and spend some time doing something else. And during those breaks, put up an out of office message. In my little workbook, I've included a sample office out of office message that I used over the winter break. Um, but I think the important components of that are telling students when you won't be available, telling them why you won't be available, and reminding them of the importance for taking time off. And again, I work with adults, you might work with adults or young adults, and this reminder, I think culturally we have been discouraged from taking breaks. And so I want to model for my students that when they get out in the workplace, they should be taking their vacation and it should be taking their time off. And finally, make your students wait. It is okay if you do not immediately respond to an email. You do not need to respond to email while you're in the grocery checkout line on your phone. You do not need to respond to student email at 10 o'clock at night. It is okay for them to wait for an answer. If they wait, often they will find the answer themselves. Um, And so, again, this is modeling. We live in this culture where it's just nonstop, right? It's nonstop asking things from us. It's nonstop news alerts and alerts on our phones. And we are modeling for other people healthy online behavior and that it's okay to not immediately respond to things. Third category is creativity. Online teaching requires us to spend a lot of our time in the digital world. So we're doing a lot of things on the computer. Again, we're doing a lot of just typing, repetitive exercise with our hands. And creativity is a huge, important part of my life. I often find resistance from people who say, I'm just not creative. I can't do creative things. And so I want to break down a couple strategies that I've used myself and with others to encourage you to foster some creativity and specifically sort of some hands-on art practices that can really help with mental health. And again, these are proactive strategies. So, if we have these projects built in, I hope some of you are right now doing some kind of hands-on project while you're listening to this. Um, if we have these strategies built in, it's building up our um, relaxation muscles. It's meditative and it's giving us some stores of um, positive energy so that we don't become depleted. So, what do I mean? More making, less scrolling. We know that working with your hands has health benefits. If you don't believe me, email me. I will send you a bunch of articles about, knitting as a meditative practice, doodling and drawing, and how these things, make certain chemicals in our brains that make us feel good and relaxed. And like I said, there's many ways to be creative. People say to me all the time, I'm not artistic. I can't do this. Um, you don't have to be artistic. I have, over the past couple of years, faculty friends who have taken on sewing and pottery seems to be a hot one right now. And adopted those practices and have come back to me and said, thank you for encouraging me to do this because it has added a whole new dimension to my life and a great way to restore and replenish my well-being. If you feel like intimidated, where do we even start? Consider a daily practice or a daily challenge. Look online there's millions of them online. Um, Challenges, daily art challenges. And a great way to start a new art habit is to do something small every day. So there's all kinds of Inktober is like a challenge in October where people do ink drawings. There's a 100-day challenge where you try to make something every day. And again, this doesn't have to be huge. Like for me, maybe doodling a flower every day in my notebook would be something that I could do for 100 days. Again, the key isn't to do it for 100, to have to meet that 100 days or to do it every day. It's not an opportunity to beat yourself up. It's not something that should become an obligation. It's an opportunity and an invitation to practice something and get yourself in the habit of doing some of these creative practices. And learning a new skill is always, a great way to explore different aspects of your creativity that you might not even know existed. And finally, one really effective strategy for me has been mark making. Mark making is exactly what it sounds like. You take a scrap of paper, you doodle on it steady marks. Um, a very basic one is to take a scrap piece of paper out of your recycling bin and just make simple lines in a row and rows of these lines. I challenge you to do it for 5 minutes and not start to feel relaxed. You can make dots, you can make circles, stars, any shape. There are online classes and challenges that talk more about this. And it's a strategy that I often use during like a Zoom meeting like this, where I'm sort of just sitting and listening and taking information in, or even when I am listening to student presentations, rather than when I get bored, I get antsy, going online and like checking my social media. If I have something in front of me that I can work on, it's very relaxing and meditative while I am listening. And finally, community. So online teaching can be an isolating lifestyle. There are less online programs at the university, therefore there are less online faculty. Um, we are a small group and we don't always um, feel heard as much as the on-ground faculty. So it's important to build up that community yourself. You also are missing out on the face-to-face interaction with students. I'm a huge advocate of online learning. I think this is a fantastic way to teach, especially to adults who need the flexibility. And you absolutely can build community online and build community with your students and build connections and relationships. However, with that being said, you still are missing the physical interaction piece. So sort of three different levels of community. In my mind, so there's my people, that's my family. I have family who live in my home, I have family who don't live in my home, and then my friends. And so I very consciously try to have a meal or take a walk or do an activity with at least one family member or friend per week outside of my home. And this just keeps me in contact with people. And even though sometimes I feel like I don't have time for this, I always, always, always feel better after I do it. Um, the second is to engage with colleagues. So, in the School of Education, one of the very first things I did when I was hired was start a group of online faculty in the School of Education. We meet monthly and we discuss things that are relevant to online faculty that might not be addressed in our larger faculty meetings with all of the faculty or even in the Senate or all of the university faculty. So we will talk about things like new technology tools or strategies that we found, problems unique to online, working with online students, sort of like the ongoing constant phone calls and requests for help. We'll talk about things like registration and how we're managing advising and all of the different functions of the university, but specific to online. It has been incredibly valuable. It's also helped me to build friendships and relationships with other faculty who teach online within my department. And so when I encounter a problem, I have people I can reach out to. And finally, form communities of practice. So I know that Sarah has started one for online faculty. If you're interested, hit her up to see how you can join. I think some of you even came from there, and I'm also part of that group. Um, and then also look outside, look to, I'm on Blue Sky. Twitter had always historically been a great place for me to connect with faculty from other universities. But now I've moved over to Blue Sky, do the same thing to talk to people who are teaching online and some of the challenges that they're facing and the strategies that they're using to address those challenges. So build up your online community and contact as well. It can be really useful to know what faculty are doing at other institutions. So finally, my concluding piece, you probably heard me say at the beginning, like, online teaching can expand to fill all of the time we have, and faculty have been asked to do more and more and take on more and more responsibilities. And now I'm asking you to add all these self-care practices into your life. So self-care really to me is about time management. That's the bottom line. I mean, it feels great to do all these things, but if you can't find the time for them, they're not going to help you. So how do we approach fitting in these strategies? So I challenge you to just adopt one practice, one thing we've talked about today, or one thing that will come out of the discussion, and do it for a set period of time. So maybe for a month, during the week, every day you doodle on a piece of paper, or you start taking a walk after dinner every night. And again, it's about the consistency, but less about the every single day. It does not need to become just another obligation. And it's important to remember that while our work is really important, and absolutely love my work, uh, at the end of the day, our life is what we pay attention to and what we put our effort towards. And so we need to remember to put the effort and the care into ourselves and not just into our students and our work, because we really can't continue to be effective educators and researchers and people in the world if we're not taking care of ourselves. And finally, again, you don't have to do all these things today. Pick something, try it out, and if it doesn't work, get rid of it. If you have certain self-care strategies that you've already built in that are not really serving you, get rid of them. There's no reason to hang on to things that are not adding to your life anymore. So feel free to abandon when you find something just isn't working. And that's a wrap. So my last piece is three great books that are sort of loosely tied into what we've talked about today. Um, I can't recommend these books enough. 4,000 Weeks is about time management and the cover looks boring and the title sounds boring. I promise you this is one of the best books I've ever read. Wintering, actually hated while I read it. I didn't really connect with the author. However, the principles that she shares are really interesting and really focus on, again, why it's important to do these things in sort of a proactive way and build them in as habits, and how doing so can sort of restore you and make you like a stronger, better you. And How to Do Nothing talks about kind of this constant need to be on and doing things and how we can resist that. So that's all for my presentation. And if people have strategies that they use, I would love to hear them and check out the workbook. And if there are things that you think would be helpful to add to the workbook, I am super open to that as well. So thank you so much.